Was 9/11 an inside job? We'll let you know on All the News.
All right, it's Chris Aiken with All the News, and our next guest up here on the show today, the guy has probably made, I'm going to guess and say this guy has made a movie that has been seen possibly by more people than any other movie in the history of movie making, with over 150 million views on the various internet sites, and I'm sure all over the world people have seen it. Everybody has talked about it. Of course, I'm talking about the Loose Change movies. Filmmaker Dylan Avery is with us today to talk a little bit of 9/11 conspiracy and talk about his new movie, Loose Change, American Coup. So, Dylan, welcome to the show.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Sure, man. Well, Dylan, as I told you, as you and I were emailing back and forth setting this up, I'm a fan of what you do. I certainly think that, like a lot of people today, everybody's eyes need to be open to at least to the thoughts of the fact that everything is not being told. And I mean, in all fairness, I'll tell you, there are things in your movie in Loose Change that I don't always agree with, which I'm sure you probably run into a lot. There's a lot of stuff that I do totally agree with you with, but ultimately I think what Loose Change was designed to do was not necessarily convince everybody of every point as much as make people open their eyes to the fact that, it wasn't just coincidence that two planes hit in New York and another one in Pennsylvania and another one in Washington. Is that pretty good summary of what you were trying to say?
I'd say that's fairly accurate. As you said, it's never been about saying that the film has all the answers or that it's the Bible of the truth movement, as some people have tried to accuse it of being. It's always been, as you said, about merely getting people to open their eyes and realize that there's a large amount of things about that day that simply don't add up. I don't know if you've had a chance to actually see American Coup yet, but I definitely feel it's the most solid, definitely the most solid edition. I feel a very, very fitting send-off to this series, because I really think it sums up all the years of hard work and research and things that I've learned, people I talk to. It's just, I feel like it's a very fitting send-off to everything that I had to go through.
Right on, man. Well, with American Coup, man, I'll be honest, I have not seen it yet, but from everything that I've read about it, it almost sounds like you've tried to take the events of 9/11 and maybe portray them as almost a continuation of events that have happened throughout world history. Things like the Reichstag fire as an example. And it almost sounded like you were trying to correlate, well, this is what happened with that government, and this is what the result was, and now here's what happened at 9/11, and this is the result. Is that what you're trying to do with American Coup?
More or less. That's what the opening of the film details. It provides the historical precedent that was somewhat lacking from the previous editions, which people had told us to include. Information which had been in, a lot of other previous films by other filmmakers, which we'd never covered. And, I really think it opens up people's eyes to the possibility and, the kind of things that really go on behind the scenes. And I think one of the most beautiful additions to the American Coup edition is the addition of the Manhattan Project and all the work and research and secrecy that went into that. I mean, this was the development of the atomic bomb, which ended up taking at least 200,000 lives confirmed. Not to mention the sick, the radiation poisoning and the damage to Hiroshima and Nagasaki's infrastructure. Simply the casualties alone and the amount of secrecy that went into that project. I mean, Vice President Harry Truman didn't even become aware of the Manhattan Project until after he took office. This is the Vice President. So, it's astounding to me that some people can say, the government can't keep secrets. I mean, the government by and large and as a whole, I'm sure cannot keep secrets, but a very tight-knit group of people, the majority of which I'm sure we don't even know exist, that theoretically would have planned this operation. Those people are good at keeping secrets, and the reason they're good at it is because we don't even, like I said, we don't even know that these people exist. I'm very hesitant to get into terms like Illuminati or New World Order because they're very polarizing terms, and I can't prove it. I certainly can't prove that there is a shadowy organization that makes all the decisions in the world, but at the same time, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. And I also don't believe that George Bush himself had anything to do with the orchestration or, authorization of the attacks, whichever it may be. I think as with all governments and with all presidencies, a large amount of the decisions are made by people that we don't ever see.
Sure. Absolutely, man. Now, man, it's interesting that you say that, because that was actually one of the places I was going to go. I'm going to pull back a little bit to Loose Change Final Cut a little bit, and one of the things that jumped out at me was you went into great detail about talking about the quality of air, and how the after 9/11, how the air was pretty toxic for people, but yet the administration basically put it out there and changed documentation and did everything they could to say, okay, it's not toxic, everything's good to go. And you really kind of pointed the finger at the administration. Do you really think that people like Christy Todd Whitman and Condoleezza Rice and basically the administration truthfully said that the air was clean when they knew that it was deadly?
I mean, the thing that's documented by those news clips in Final Cut is that the White House directly changed the press releases, and this is documented fact. I mean, they had the releases before and after, and it's very clear what the White House did. The buck stopped at Christine Todd Whitman, and from what I've heard from John Feel, who runs the Feel Good Foundation, which is, pretty much the chief foundation responsible for right now for keeping the first responders' lights on, because we're still fighting to get legislation through that provides financial assistance for these people. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I've spoken with John Feel extensively on this topic, and I've spoken with a variety of first responders, too. And, I mean, the buck stops at Condoleezza Rice and Christy Todd Whitman. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, Condoleezza Rice, is very hard to find any official ties to the decision, but from what I'm hearing, that's what it ultimately came down to. I mean, the bottom line, man, is that these people have absolutely no value for human life, whether it's overseas or domestic. They just simply don't care. These people have been doing what they do for a very long time. I mean, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld are no strangers to politics. They've been around for previous administrations. And hell, man, I mean, even now, Dick Cheney can't stop getting on TV talking about how unsafe we are. Right. I mean, you want to talk about terrorism, and you want to talk about putting fear in the American people. I mean, that's all Dick Cheney does. Right. About getting on TV occasionally and saying, oh, well, we're still not safe. I mean, it's just appalling to me, the amount of arrogance these people have, that they can, essentially steal 2 elections, launch 2 illegal wars that were never officially authorized by Congress, which is illegal by definition, slaughter an untold million of innocent people. I mean, the list of atrocities committed by these people goes on, and the simple arrogance that they have to get back on TV with a new administration and say, by the way, we're still not safe, it just boggles the mind. I mean, again, these people have zero regard for the average American person, and it's astounding to me that people can still try to argue that. I mean, these are people that, without 0 second thought, launched an illegal war in Iraq that they knew was not justified in the widespread majority of not only the American public side, but the world. I mean, the protests that took place in the early months of 2003 were unprecedented. You had millions of people all across the world, people that had never been to America or Iraq protesting the war because they knew of the implications. I mean, I was against the war before it was cool. Right. Sure, absolutely. Now, so then do you think that now, I mean, obviously, now the new administration is in there, and I agree with you that, it's time on both sides, almost, really. It's time for Dick Cheney to get off the news and anybody involved with the Bush administration. It's time for them to go away. It's time for the Obama administration to step up and do what they're going to do. But ultimately, do you think that when you look at the Obama administration and you look at the direct pointing of, I'll call it populist to be polite to the president, but populist, socialist, whatever you want to call it, it's almost like it's the furthering of the agenda that a lot of what happened after 9/11 caused. Do you see that? Oh, yeah. I'm not an Obama supporter by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, for the 3rd term in a row, I can gladly say I didn't vote for the guy. Because, I mean, I saw more of the same coming up on the horizon. I mean, you see him promising, you can take it to the bank that I'm going to end the war. And meanwhile, all I've seen is escalation and more troops. I mean, I can't say that I'm a supporter of him. And as you said, I mean, it's a continuation. I mean, we're still hearing him evoke September 11th, and we're still hearing him talk about, not necessarily the war on terror. I believe that they've officially ditched that phrase, but right. I mean, he's still doing the same job that Bush was. Mm-hmm. Sure, I mean, it's very clear. It's just a different side of the coin now. That's the only thing that's different. And he's cooler, like he's the cooler president. Yeah, exactly. Which almost makes it easier for people not to pay attention to the fact that he's literally just destroying the country faster than even the last administration could do it.